parts of speech. And these are pretty good sized tables, so I'm not just going to open that up. I probably should have a warning on size limits to the table because some of these tables are big, really, really big. Of course, I can create a new database, a new table, new column, delete a database, a column, or table. I can rename a database, a table, or column. I can copy a database, table, or column. So I can do all that stuff, manipulating large files. And well, so basically you have the gist of sort of a basic overview of tables within the Athena brain. You can also look at those tables. I'm going to open up the database folder. Remember Athena, we have the databases, and simply the databases are just files, and within these files are columns. So we have the database, we have the tables, and we have their columns, and it keeps track. The matrix DLL, which I created, keeps track of it, so it turns these files and folders into databases. Now I'm using these as databases because they're a whole lot faster, much more efficient than if I used a Microsoft Access database or something like that. It's slower. When you get into really large databases, they're slow. In this case, this is much faster, and you can use a tremendous amount of information. And another thing, these databases are a whole lot smaller. Microsoft Access just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, like many times bigger than this. So you can have an enormous text database without causing too much of a problem. And you can copy, of course, in this case, since you know that they're files, you can copy these things. You can copy it and rename it right from here. You can copy and rename the database from here. You can copy and rename or edit these tables from here. So you can do all kinds of things manually. Now go ahead and jump back to the script editor, and in the script editor we're going to go to the main brain, and I've broken this main brain down into large sections. And first of all, I'm just going to mention here that at the bottom of this particular brain, I just added, and I even gave it a name here. It says the matrix DLL library, and this is a list of all the subs and functions contained in the matrix DLL. You can copy and paste it for resource purposes. Yeah, and I misspell things, so whatever. But we have within the matrix DLL, we have a word library where you're dealing with like WordNet functions, finding the definition of a word, for instance, or finding if a word is a noun or a verb or whatever. And you can utilize it, like if you were going to use it within your text and you want to get a random definition. And when I say random definition, if you have many definitions for the same word, and sometimes you can choose get random definition, and you can look up the word with word to look up, and you have this connection to the database. And we'll mention that in a moment about connecting to the databases, because most of these functions connect to a database, and you have to select what database you want to connect to with a variable. Well, I'm using a variable anyway, like this word connection right here. You put the connection within here. It's a string, and the word you want to find the definition to, you put it right here, and you can use this whole function, and it will put the definition of that word into this variable called text. And I just jumped across the whole thing. It's still there. Here, around the definition, you put it all within a variable called text, or whatever you want to do with it. Anybody who knows their VB script that knows what's going on here. We have a word library, we have a database library where you can connect, add information to the database, take information out of the database, manipulate the database, delete things in the database. It's pretty straightforward. Of course, I'll help when I can. I'll try to make some tutorials based upon these particular functions. Like you can delete a table on command. You can create tables. You can create columns, delete columns. You can find particular values within that column. You can even encrypt and decrypt a database if you want to. So there's all kinds of things. You can count the number of rows within a database, within a particular table, and this is handy stuff. This is a kind of you can do a lot of things to this database, things you probably never ever need, but if you ever want to use them, they're there. And I use them sometimes in a hidden manner, behind the scenes. I'll use some of those particular functions, but I've used. They're useful. They're not just. I didn't just do it for the fun of it. We have a parser library where you can parse a sentence. What that means is you can take an entire sentence and break it down into like it says, like I want to run outside, and it will break the sentence up with the subject and the verb, and break the sentence up with whatever. If there's a prepositional phrase there, it will say that there's a prepositional phrase and will tell you what the prepositional phrase is. It breaks it up into sections, and it uses the WordNet class to do it. So you can get the verb phrase, you get the noun, the subject noun, you can get a question subject noun. Now that's a little more complicated because a question is built differently than a regular sentence. And another thing is this isn't perfect because this is highly complex things going on here, and I tried to do it where it will work the best. But sometimes a person can write a sentence that it will not comprehend correctly. It will not understand correctly. It's just a lot of variables within the human language, and sometimes this thing can't keep up with it. But for general simple sentences, for the most part, it will do a good job of finding the subject, for instance, of a sentence. You can put the sentence, like for instance, right in here, and here's the connection to the database. So it will try to find that sentence using the word database, or the word net database, which we've seen a while ago earlier. We have a kit library, and I added all kinds of weird functions that you might want to be able to use. You can connect directly to the command prompt, send information to the command prompt, and retrieve information back from the command prompt. The cmd.exe prompt, Microsoft prompt. You can run a script. You can run all the scripts within the file. You can find the argument, which is, I use that within the script so you understand what it is. It's a little complicated, but I try to give examples of this because it's useful to find an argument. You can open a program, compile a program using VB code. You can compile one with this function. So you can, if you have a text file or information, and you have a bunch of lines of code, whatever, however you want to use it, you can send this code into this particular function. And say, for instance, you want to create a window within Athena. Well, you can create it with using the kit.compile. And you can I think it's pretty cool. There's so much expandability you can do with this particular program if you know what you're doing. A thread timer, so you can have the timer pause, things pause for a moment. Text reader, text writer, randomized array. You have an array of information and you just want a random